This is Terms of Reference. I'm your host, Stephen Laddick. Jade Morgan is a Peace Corps volunteer currently serving in the Philippines, where she works with the Department of Social Welfare and Development and the 4Ps program in providing life skills training, academic and professional development, tutoring, and mentorship to youth in her community. During her time studying social work at the Metropolitan State University of Denver, Jade worked with recently resettled refugees as an ESL instructor, job skills facilitator, leader in refugee women's health groups, and mentor. After college, Jade worked as a health education specialist with the Screening, Brief, Intervention, and Referral to Treatment program at Denver Health Emergency Department in Colorado, providing interventions for indigent patients struggling with alcohol and drug addiction. Jade aspired to return to her instinctive passion of working with international populations by applying for Peace Corps Philippines. She landed a position in Children, Youth, and Families sector and will be serving for 2 years until September 2017. Her goals are to expand her personal and professional capacities as a development worker and contribute to the long friendship between Peace Corps and the country of Philippines. I spoke with Jade in the Philippines. Hi, Jade. Thank you so much for being on the Terms of Reference podcast today.
Hello, Stephen. Happy International Women's Day.
Ooh, wow, good call. I just realized it was International Women's Day today as well. Let's start off by telling, where are you sitting today? Where are we calling you?
Kind of funny. I am sitting in the guest house of a college that I do work at. So they were kind enough to allow me to stay here and use their internet. So that's where I'm sitting right now.
And where is that college or guest house located? I'm trying to get at what country are you sitting in?
Sure. I'm in Philippines right now. So I'm serving in the United States Peace Corps in Philippines, and I am in the Mimaropa region.
Mimaropa region. Sweet. So we're literally on opposite sides of the planets. I still can't get over. I'm an old guy, I still can't get over how awesome technology is sometimes, right?
Oh, I know.
So the Mimaropa region, you're in the U.S. Peace Corps. And the reason why I specifically was really interested in having this conversation is that we're coming close to our 100th episode. And you are a new...
Congratulations.
Thanks. You are a relatively new Peace Corps volunteer. You're kind of first entering into this experience, even though you've been there a couple months. And one thing that we know from the podcast is that so many of us in the development and aid profession get our start from being in the Peace Corps. And I wanted to talk with you today about what's that like? A real firsthand experience of what's the Peace Corps like today here in 2016 for people who are considering this. So why don't we start off by saying, let's learn about what you do, and then, we'll go into how you got there. So tell us, what's the program that you work on?
So basically, in every Peace Corps country, it's a little bit different. They have kind of different work sectors. So in Peace Corps Philippines, there's 3 sectors. There's the education sector, coastal resource management or environment, and then children, youth, and families, youth development, which we call CYF. And I am in the CYF sector. So I do social work there. CYF volunteers kind of work in a number of different settings in Philippines, including, care centers, group homes, rehabilitation and reintegration programs, anti-trafficking efforts, NGOs, nonprofits, you name it. But the majority of current CYF volunteers like myself are working with Philippines' Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD, in a subset program called Pantawid Pamilyang Filipino program, or the 4Ps program.
I was going to say, could they make that alliteration any more difficult to say?
I'm getting really good at tongue twisters in the Philippines, I have to say. But this is a countrywide conditional cash grant program for the most impoverished families in the country. As somebody like you said, that's kind of new in international development, and this is our entry point. For volunteers like myself, it's really exciting because CCTs, or conditional cash transfer programs, exist in 64 countries. And in 2015, the World Bank reported that, 82% of the benefits of the 4Ps program reached the bottom 40% of the population in Philippines. So it's ranking it superior to prior social programs. So it's really exciting to be, a part of this program.
Maybe you're about to go into this. I'm interested in what, cash transfer program. We've many of us have heard of it, but some people who are listening to the podcast, that sounds like, hey, you're just giving cash to people. Is that the beginning and the end of it? Or kind of more specifically, what does that look like?
Well, I would say it's more of an investment. That's particularly how they've structured it. So the 4Ps program, has 2 types of cash grants that are given out to beneficiaries, as they call them. There's a health grant, which is a considerable amount of money to make sure that women and children are getting their needs met as far as health and wellness is concerned. And then I think that they focus a lot on education. So, and this is kind of where Peace Corps comes into play as well. The 4Ps program offers a scholarship to college-age students from these families so that they are able to attend school. So as you can imagine, this is a huge opportunity for the scholar, their family, their community, for them to be able to attend college. That's why I consider it more of an investment. So Peace Corps has partnered with DSWD, the 4Ps program, colleges and universities to kind of assist in facilitating not just, the disbursement of funds, but also family and youth development sessions, activities on life skills, health and wellness, sports camps, study groups, gender equality sessions. And then I do a lot of mentoring with the scholars, the 4P scholars, through a local college. So, our aim as volunteers is to further add to, a holistic development model and break the poverty cycle for families through education and capacity building. So that's a huge aim of, the Peace Corps, but also, the 4Ps program.
And so tell us a little bit more about the specific, your specific work in mentoring and those kinds of things. Like what's a day-to-day look like for you?
Well, it's always different. I spend a lot of time kind of working on life skills. So, I work with a group of students, like I said, at our local college, and together we, discuss various topics. It can be anything from kind of healthy relationships to study habits to more intensive topics like HIV/AIDS, family planning, things like that. So we work a lot recently on life skills, and I'm kind of developing with my counterparts some leadership trainings, livelihood programs. We're doing a lot here, but my focus is always just forming strong relationships with the youth here, and particularly these scholars. So I've been spending a lot of time just getting close with them and working on numerous projects.
Because you're a new entrant into the Peace Corps, actually, how long have you been in the Peace Corps right now?
I arrived in the country of Philippines in July, and then I started my service in September. There's kind of a few months where we're training. So I've been in Philippines for about 9 months now. Okay,
great. So, less than a year, but you're deep enough in that you've got your feet on the ground and you know what you're doing. Tell us about your time just before and then entering into the Peace Corps. What were you doing just before the Peace Corps? Were you coming out of school? Were you in a job? What were you doing? And then let's talk about that transition period.
Sure. So I went to school in Colorado, and I graduated with a bachelor's in social work in 2012. And after that, I kind of traveled a little bit. I did very brief volunteering abroad. I was in Nepal, and I worked in a local group home there, like I said, very briefly. When I returned back, I found a job working with a program called SBIRT, which stands for Screening, Brief Intervention, and Referral to Treatment. And this was a drug education, drug prevention, and then also harm reduction program. And I was doing that in a hospital in Denver. So something kind of very different than international development, but I really appreciated the work. It was centered in behavior change, which I think can be applicable in the work I'm doing here as well. While I was in college, I did volunteering and interning almost exclusively in refugee resettlement. And I think that's what really sparked, my passion to go abroad and to work in international development, response, and aid.
I was going to say, so it sounds like you have had a passion for this kind of service work for some time now. Is that correct?
That's very true. I always knew that I wanted to work internationally. I think that came first. So my parents were traveling musicians around the United States when they were my age. So our home was always full of good music, good art, stories, pictures of things they'd seen, and all the different people that they had met. So from an early age, I was in love with the idea of kind of exploring the world and learning from different people and experiences. But, the desire to work in development or aid kind of came at a very specific, ferocious moment when I was young. I was clicking through television channels, and for some reason I stopped on a show called World Birthday. I can't remember the channel, but I know it was called World Birthday. And it followed several women around the world as they gave birth. And I think I was 11 years old, and I was fairly unfamiliar with the outside world, particularly discrepancies in healthcare and services. So I recall watching a girl that was only a few years older than me at the time give birth in a rural Ethiopian clinic, without any medications or family members. She didn't even have a private room or her own bed. So, needless to say, I was really shaken, but for the better. And after that, I was, interested in what was really happening in the world. And I felt a strong desire, to help however I could. So the public service aspect came in when I was old enough to realize, the amount of disparity and injustice and need in these places that I had always longed to see. So I felt less of an interest in just being like a traveler in the world and more of a responsibility to kind of be fighting for our world. So to speak.
Now, is there anything that you studied specifically in school to prepare you for joining the Peace Corps or for the development in the profession in general?
I kind of took an interesting route. I wanted to do international relations for the longest time and kind of gravitated to social work through a friend of mine, but I don't regret that at all. Social work is a very broad field. It's a very broad discipline. So I felt like I, really chose something that was beneficial in the long run. But like I said, I spent a lot of time while I was in school volunteering and doing internships in refugee resettlement. At my school, kind of a bizarre choice, and I had to kind of advocate for myself a little bit to go into refugee resettlement. But that was a really transformative experience. I think that's what really solidified that I wanted to do this. And, I wanted to see it from every angle. I wanted to go abroad. And yeah, I loved working with international populations and with different languages and things like that. So.
Did you study a different language or did you come to the Peace Corps with a different language other than English, obviously?
Unfortunately, no. That languages has always been my biggest struggle. So, I was exclusively English speaking when I arrived to Philippines, arrived in Peace Corps. Fortunately for me, Peace Corps provides excellent language training when you first arrive. So the language that that I've been instructed on and that I continue to learn is Tagalog. So I'm working very hard at it, but it is definitely my biggest personal struggle here.
Nice. What about some of the other people in your cadre? I don't know. Are you the class of 15 or 16 in Peace Corps? I'm not sure which one you'd be a part of, but tell me about the different kinds of experiences they have. Are you finding that most of the people are similar to yourself, where they kind of knew this is what they wanted to do, and they've sort of been focused and see this as a way to really contribute, or is there more of a diversity of experience and expectations?
I am in Peace Corps Philippines batch 274. So actually, Philippines is the second oldest Peace Corps program. So there's been many batches before me. And in this batch, the one that I'm a part of, it is such a diverse group of people with so many different experiences. We have individuals who've been living abroad for a very long time, several people who've been in Peace Corps before, and then we have people, who've never traveled abroad before. And I would say that, it's hard to answer that because just everybody comes from such diverse backgrounds. But I would say the majority of people that are here are really truly invested in international work, development work, and they see this, as kind of a launch pad into, a career in those fields.
What's the age range in your batch?
I would say we have, people who are fresh out of college, and then all the way, we do have a retired couple serving right now. And before Peace Corps Philippines, they were actually serving in another Peace Corps country. So, the age range is anywhere from, 21 all the way up to, in your 60s. So
nice.
We don't discriminate. We have
the reason why I ask is because my parents did Peace Corps and after they were retired as well. And they both turned 70 in the country of Georgia when they were serving. So I'm always interested to hear what the range is in ages there.
That's wonderful. It's great to hear that they served. Yeah.
One of the interesting aspects of Peace Corps, right? When, back in the day when it was founded umpteen years ago, was the fact that you got to get on an airplane and go to the middle of whoever or wherever, right? You get to the middle of Africa or middle of Asia or middle of the Philippines in your case. And you would be separated from the world essentially, right? It was a massive growth experience for yourself, and hopefully you'll be able to contribute to the community you live in. How do you think that has changed, or how do you feel differently, given the fact that, you're sitting there right now with a phone and we're having this conversation? You can probably stay up to date and in touch with all of your friends back at home and in Colorado, et cetera. Is that diminishing the experience for you at all, or is that enhancing the experience, or is it something that you even think about?
It's definitely something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. I think it's actually kind of a surprise to me that, I'm able to stay as connected as I am. I think I kind of had this, idea of Peace Corps that I would be, in the middle of nowhere, holding two hangers together to try to get a reception or something. And it hasn't been my experience at all. I'm very connected. But I would say that, that is kind of the world we live in. We're more interconnected than ever. And it also kind of helps in Peace Corps' goals, and my own personal goals to be able to share my experience here with my friends and family kind of, while I'm here, while I'm in it. So the connectivity of it has been actually a great benefit to my service. But, that's at times it makes it a little bit more difficult, because I am speaking to my family more frequently. But I would say overall, really, it's great to be able to kind of share my experience while I'm in it and, let them kind of see a glimpse into my life as I'm here, as it's happening. So.
Are there any aspects of technology or the connected world that you live in that contribute to the program that you're on? Contribute to your mentoring, contribute to your service delivery?
Oh, absolutely. I think that for me, I'm really interested in getting them, more familiar with, computers and more familiar with, the different kinds of things that we can do. There's a really great organization called code.org. So I'm looking to kind of put on an event with them where you're able to kind of teach students about writing code, and then also just kind of getting them more familiar with some of the programs that will definitely benefit them in the long run. And it's, it's still a struggle. We don't always have access to computers, or we don't always have stable electricity or Wi-Fi connection, et cetera. So there's a huge gap here at times. We still struggle with that. It's not as easy as it seems, I would say.
Do you feel like an outsider there? Are you working in a community that's had Peace Corps volunteers before and, sort of you're an accepted part of the community? Or what's your sense of how well you mesh with where you live?
Well, I live in a community that has not had American volunteers before, but they have had volunteers from other countries, including, Australia and the UK. So they have some familiarity with volunteers, less familiarity with Americans. But I've been really fortunate, I should say, my integration process has been really smooth. My counterparts at work and my host family has been extremely warm. And, on those days that it is a struggle or I do miss home or I do feel a little bit outside of things, I'm able to be very honest with them and they kind of bring me back in and it's great. I'm in a very warm community. And everybody goes out of their way to make me feel at home and at ease. And I'm very lucky.
Is there a moment that you might be able to share with us, like sort of a low moment? And is there a time when those happen specifically, or do they catch you off guard, or is it culturally related? Or can you describe one of those for us?
I would say for me, the hardest moments that I've had have definitely been from language barrier. I'm fortunate that I live in a community where most people can communicate pretty efficiently, beautifully, even in English. But there are times where I have been invited to sessions or been invited to speak, and I know that, nothing I'm saying is really getting through, and that can be very, very frustrating. I feel more embarrassed than anything because it's a desire of mine to speak the local language. And when I feel like I can't do that and English isn't working either, I definitely, it's overwhelming. And it's, you can kind of feel a little bit scared and confused about your place. But I've never been in a situation where a counterpart of mine or a friend of mine hasn't swooped in and rescued me in a moment like that.
Mm. My next question is, what about the other side of the coin? Is there a particular moment that you've told your family or friends about, or that, you're going to remember as a big success, or, that day where everything just worked? Can you tell us about something like that?
Sure. I have so many of those moments, and I know that sounds a little bit silly.
Not at all.
Yeah, no, there's so many, really. There's so many that it's hard to pick one. We recently, a few other volunteers and myself, we got together and we did an event called PACA, which stands for Participatory Analysis for Community Action. And this was an event that kind of did a series of needs assessments in the communities, but they were largely facilitated for and by the youth, these 4P scholars. And I just remember, just kind of sitting back and being so amazed with how invested they were in community development and kind of, expanding on all of these things that we were talking about and getting out there and doing extension projects. And, these are students that have a lot going on, but they were still just so motivated to make change in their community. And I think for me, I couldn't help but be, it gives me goosebumps to even just talk about it. It was just the moment that I knew that I was in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing for them, for myself. So I would definitely say that happened really recently where I was like, yep, this is it. This is for me. So.
Super cool. What about, you've been there for, let's call it 9 months now. What other interactions have you had with the development community, if any? You've said that in your particular community, they've had other volunteers. When you go back to meet or, gather with the other people from your batch, are you also interacting with other NGOs, other, USAID, these kinds of other government donors?
Unfortunately, at this point in my service, I have not had the opportunity to interact with any other NGOs or USAID or any other international volunteers. It's just been us out here, really. But that's not to say that's the same for all of the volunteers in my batch. Many volunteers who are in the CYF program or social work sector, and then some of the environmental sectors are working very closely with other NGOs. I know that other volunteers have had that experience, but right now I'm the only volunteer within my community along with my site mate.
So has that made you feel disconnected, special, good, bad, ugly?
Both, I think. I definitely, like I said, me and my site mate, we feel like rock stars in our community. We definitely it feels like celebrity status sometimes. So that can be great, but there can also be a lot of pressure with that. And I would really love the opportunity to work with other, development organizations. But unfortunately, we just haven't had the opportunity just yet. However, some of the other volunteers, they put on events. They do programs that we're able to attend if we want to engage and interact with other NGOs and organizations and things like that. So I'm looking forward to getting to see what else, who else is here, I should say, and brainstorm ideas and things like that.
Do you have an arc, a path for the next, 1.5 years of your service, or is it let's figure it out day by day? Or, do you have a specific set of goals that you are either tasked to achieve or you want to achieve?
We are focusing right now a lot on building, youth leadership and then aiding the youth as they facilitate some community extension projects within their community. So the big focus for me for the next 1.5 years is really just empowering the group of students that I have here, building that rapport, building our relationship, and empowering them with whatever they might need, whether it's, specific tools, skills, or just that motivation to get out there and do the, peer development and community development from them. So that's what we're focusing on right now is, planning and developing leadership trainings and extension activities that are facilitated by the scholars themselves.
And is there any thought right now, I know this is probably really still early days for you, about what will happen after Peace Corps? Do you think about that?
I do think about that. I've really fallen in love with being abroad. So some days, I think I could definitely do Peace Corps again after my service here. But I know, in my rational mind, I need to start to gravitate a little bit to going to grad school. That I think that will probably be the next move for me after Peace Corps.
What do you think that that you'd learn from grad school that would be an asset? I mean, are there specific gaps in your knowledge that you're finding or specific technical areas that you'd like to get more proficient at?
Yes, absolutely. I've seen, just for me personally, I would like to expand a little bit more on monitoring and evaluation, just testing the programs that I'm involved with, seeing how things work, action planning. And so I would definitely like to go to graduate school to brush up on that and feel more confident in my abilities to track what I'm doing and track what successes we have. So.
Only a couple more questions for you, Jade. What's something that is completely, something about your experience in the Peace Corps that's completely unexpected? Like you said, I didn't think this was going to happen at all.
Well, other than the illnesses, I would say every time I get sick, I think, well, I really did not think this through. I think, I really did not anticipate finding such close friends out here. I thought, I definitely thought I would form those relationships and have great bonds. But, in my short time here, I've already kind of cultivated relationships here that are going to be very hard to leave when I'm finished with service. I think that's part of my service that I didn't really anticipate, is getting so close so quickly with some of the people that I've met along the way. So even right now, it's hard for me to think about, moving away or going to grad school and all of this. I can't imagine how difficult it'll be for us both when that time actually comes. So that's something that I did not see coming, is just how much I would love it here and the relationships that I would build.
Tell me about, you just spurred another random thought in my mind I'd like to ask, is that, what about the supervision that you have? I know that a lot of people I've talked with, there's the perception that Peace Corps kind of chooses a place for you and then sort of drops you off out of a helicopter and then, okay, call us in 2 years. What's both the supervision as well as the direction that you receive from the headquarters office there in the Philippines?
Well, I actually filled out a more recent application where you are allowed to choose where you go. So Philippines was my first choice.
Wow, you're a chooser. That's awesome.
I know. I almost hesitate to tell people that.
I was going to say, but were you psyched about that, or was that kind of, do you think that took a little bit away from the experience?
I was happy that I was able to choose where I was going, particularly because, my parents wanted to have some say in it as well, to be completely honest. So yeah, they did actually have a hand in picking, but I don't feel like it's taken away from my service at all. There is an excitement and an adventure side of it that for the volunteers that did not pick. I did intentionally, want to come to Philippines, and I'm very happy that I was able to, to get what I requested. But like I said, I hesitate a little bit to tell anybody that. But it's been really great with the supervision here. I have several different managers within Peace Corps that are in country that are, just a phone call away, and we do monthly supervision reports. I'm fairly close to Manila, so the capital, and I am able to go visit them, and they are available 24/7 if I ever need anything. And I have had those moments where I'm just completely overwhelmed. I'm confused. And I kind of need, I need somebody to just kind of guide me through something that might be cultural, or like I said, I might be sick. And they've really given me such great support. I think that we have a very strong staff here, and we're very lucky. I'm very fortunate to say that, we have great supervision.
So there's always the threat when you're in, a situation like yourself where you're in a community, and you said you and your counterpart are kind of rock stars there, that you're going to be basically turned on 24/7, right? You're kind of feeling always at work. Do you get a lot of, do you get sufficient downtime? Do you get to take time off or see any parts of the Philippines, or how does that aspect work?
Yes. Part of our commitment is that we are kind of always on, but I would say realistically, we are allotted a lot of downtime, a lot of alone time to kind of, just wrap our mind around the day and everything that's going on. So every night, I do little things for myself. I, read my favorite book, or I watch my favorite movie on my laptop, and those kind of things kind of, bring me back to myself a little bit. And then, we are allotted a very generous amount of time to go on, little trips to see other volunteers, or to just kind of explore the Philippines. So Peace Corps does make sure that, that we are taking breaks away from site so that we're able to kind of enjoy, other parts of the Philippines, or see different sites with, our friends, our volunteers, co-volunteers. So yeah, we are given that time away from site, and it is very important that we take it, just to kind of, like I said, just wrap your mind around everything that you're doing and kind of the transformation at site and within yourself.
How much do you get paid? Is it sufficient? Do you feel like, is it even worthwhile, or is that an important aspect of the volunteer process?
I think that I should preface this by saying that I've done volunteering internationally where I've paid. So I think that, coming into the Peace Corps where we are given an allowance, and we're given a very generous allowance, I believe, it covers all the bases, it covers lodging, food, and we're able to eat, healthy, our cell phones, transportation, all of the basics are covered. And then, if you're good with your money, if you're budgeting well, if you're smart, you'll have a little bit left over to, to kind of go out and treat yourself to some good meals, or go on a little trip here and there. So Peace Corps has been very generous with, with money. I won't say that, we're rolling in money, and it can be, if you're not used to budgeting yourself, it can be challenging. But I'd say that it's definitely generous allowance that we are given.
Excellent. The last question I have for you is one I ask every person here on the Terms of Reference podcast, which is, I know that you've been working, quote unquote, in the development field for a relatively short time, but is there any one or two pieces of critical advice you would give to somebody who is either, let's say, considering the Peace Corps right now or considering a career in development and aid that you've discovered is required for starting to create success and sustainability in this career?
Sure. I would definitely say if you're interested in going and working internationally or with international populations, trying to do that while you're still at home or in college would be, a wise move. As I mentioned, I kind of worked a lot with the refugee population while I was still in Colorado and while I was still in school. And I had to fight for that a little bit. My school, it wasn't one of the offered programs. I had to kind of really, advocate for myself to get into that. And it was well worth it because you get, more exposure working with, just different worldviews, different languages, religions, just practices. So I think kind of working cross-culturally as much as you can, even while you're still at home, is a wise move. And additionally, if you're going to try to do Peace Corps or any kind of volunteer service abroad, I would say just getting to know yourself. What are your triggers? Spending time away from comforts, if it's even just for a week at a time, kind of practicing, a little bit to really, test yourself, build up that resiliency. And then I would absolutely recommend Peace Corps to anybody that even thinks, this is something that they would be interested in. I think it's been an unbelievable experience, and, I'm very fortunate. So I'm pro Peace Corps, and I would recommend it to anybody that's thinking about international development or aid work. I think it's a great place to begin.
Jade, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me, Stephen. I really appreciate the opportunity getting to speak with you.
You've been listening to the Terms of Reference podcast from aidpreneur.com. Subscribe to us on iTunes.